children should be seen but not heard. Familiar? When I was growing up in the 1950s, it was my grandparents that were seen but not heard. One of my grandmothers died before I was born, but I had both of my grandfathers until I was 5, and my grandmother until I was 21. I remember the sound of my grandmother's voice and her laughter, which was more like a giggle, but I don't remember any conversations or stories that I had with any of my grandparents. My widowed grandfather lived upstairs from us in a 2-flat that he owned. He was a retired Chicago police lieutenant, and the neighbors could set their watches every day at 10 a.m. when he would emerge wearing a suit, a tie, and a fedora and walk to Madison Street to buy the Chicago Daily Herald. When my Aunt Helen was young, my grandfather would tell her stories about Ireland, where he was born. He promised to bring her there someday, where she would see wonders beyond imagination. When he got a letter that his mother died, he never talked about Ireland again. One bitterly cold Thanksgiving, my grandfather wrapped me up in his overcoat as we scurried into St. Lucy's to say a prayer. I felt warm and safe and protected. In the summer, I stood next to him, my head craning as he gazed off in the distance, preoccupied, silent. I yearned for the warmth that I felt on that bitterly cold Thanksgiving. When I was in my mid-20s, I was curious about the generations before me. So I went to my grandpa's hometown, Rock Hill West in County Cork. I had the names of 2 of my cousins, Bart and Mary. I found their home, which was a very simple cottage with only one electric light bulb in the kitchen, which was filled with the aroma of lamb cooking fired by a peat stove. Bart was frail and in his 80s, but he brightened up, and we shared a glass of whiskey to celebrate our encounter. Bart was living on a Chicago police pension, and his sister Mary kept house. The neighbors came over, and their brogues were so strong that I only understood about 1/3 of what they were saying. It was almost as if they were singing. As twilight descended, they didn't turn on that electric light bulb until I was gazing at singing shadows. My cousin Bart turned to me with a twinkle in his eyes. "Your grandpa, he was a right good sort. My brother, Con, also worked in the Chicago Police Department. And Con got in trouble for killing a colored on duty. But your grandpa fixed it so that Con didn't get into any trouble." I was shocked. I knew my grandfather valued family, but to protect Con from an inquest into a death? I don't know the facts, whether Con acted justifiably in self-defense, but I'm pretty certain that a mother mourned the loss of her child, that a beloved had a heart broken for the rest of their lives, and that a child grew up without the benefit of a parent to help find his place in the world. I didn't tell this story to my father. I didn't tell the story to my Aunt Helen. I didn't tell this story for almost 30 years. I wanted to wrap my grandfather's reputation into my overcoat and protect it. I was seen but not heard. Recently, I brought my nieces and their children to my grandfather's hometown, and we went to the cemetery and said a prayer and sprinkled holy water over the graves of my great-grandparents and my cousins, Bart and Mary. 5 of my grandfather's great-great-grandchildren have African ancestry. My hope is that they are both seen and heard.